Stay, he said, not a question. Not even really a request, just a fact, quiet and certain, like the storm outside had already made the decision for both of us, and he was simply the one saying it out loud. I remember thinking I should say no. I remember my hand finding the porch railing instead of the porch steps. I remember the exact second I stopped pretending I wanted to leave. My name is Nora Bennett, and 2 hours earlier, if you told me I'd spend the night stranded on a stranger's porch in the middle of a lake town thunderstorm, I would have laughed and asked what kind of romance movie you thought my life was. I don't do things like that. I plan, I confirm rides twice. I keep a portable phone charger in my bag at all times, except, of course, for the one night it actually mattered. I'd come up to Birch Hollow for my best friend Sadie's wedding, technically for the rehearsal dinner, since the ceremony itself wasn't until the following afternoon. The venue was this beautiful, slightly falling apart lake house with a wraparound porch that the owners had been renovating for a year. And everyone kept saying how charming it was that the contractor was still finishing the railings the week of the wedding. I hadn't thought much about the contractor. I'd noticed him the way you notice whether a tall guy in a flannel shirt with sawdust on his forearms, quiet, polite, easy to laugh when Sadie's uncle told the same joke 3 times in a row. I didn't think about him again until the rain started. It came in fast, the kind of storm that turns the sky the color of a bruise in about 4 minutes flat. Dinner had wrapped, people were hauling gift bags and half-drunk bottles of wine out to their cars, and I ducked back toward the boathouse to grab the cardigan I'd left on a folding chair. By the time I came back around, the gravel lot was empty, just empty. Sadie's brother Tyler, who'd been my ride, had apparently assumed I'd already caught a lift with the bridesmaids, and the bridesmaids had assumed I was with Tyler. And somewhere in that particular flavor of wedding weekend chaos, everyone had simply left without me. My phone was at 4%, my charger was, and I want to stress this, sitting on my kitchen counter 200 miles away, and the rain wasn't the pretty kind anymore. It was the kind that made the trees sound like they were arguing with the sky. You missed your ride. I turned around and there he was, the contractor, tool belt slung over one shoulder, looking at me with an expression that wasn't quite amusement and wasn't quite concern. Some careful place in between. Up close in the porch light, I noticed things I hadn't at dinner, the small white scar through one eyebrow, the way he stood like a man who'd spent a lot of time deciding whether things were level. Very observant, I said, because apparently that's who I become under pressure, a woman who makes small, defensive jokes at soaking wet strangers. He almost smiled. Caleb, he said like that solved something. Nora, I know, Sadie introduced us. Twice, he said it without any real bite, just an easy sort of honesty that made me feel worse about not remembering. You were explaining seating charts to her mother both times. I don't think you clocked me at all. In my defense, her mother is very intense about seating charts. No argument there. He glanced past me at the empty lot, then up at the sky, which chose that exact moment to crack open with thunder. Look, the low bridge on Mill Road floods every time the lake comes up like this. It'll be impassable for hours, usually clears out around midnight once the runoff finds somewhere to go. There's no cell service worth trusting out here in a storm like this, and I don't love the idea of you standing in a gravel lot till your phone dies completely. So what? I'm supposed to just wait here. In the rain, I live up the hill, 10-minute walk mostly covered by trees. He said it plainly, no angle to it, like he was giving directions to the nearest gas station. You can call the inn from my landline, let them know what happened, and just wait out the flooding somewhere dry. I promise I'm not as suspicious as I currently look, standing here with a hammer on my belt in the middle of a thunderstorm. That is exactly what a suspicious person would say. Fair, he said. And this time he did smile, and it did something unreasonable to my chest. I want to tell you I hesitated because I was being cautious, because I'm a smart woman who doesn't walk into strange men's houses during thunderstorms. That's partly true. But if I'm honest, and this whole story only works if I'm honest, some smaller, more reckless part of me had already decided. The second he'd said my name like he'd been holding on to it since dinner, like it mattered that he get it right. So I went. His house sat at the top of a gravel drive, an old 2-story with a porch that wrapped clear around the front, string lights dark and swaying in the wind, a porch swing groaning on rusted chains. He got the door open, flicked on a lamp, and the whole place smelled like cedar shavings and coffee and something warmer I couldn't quite name. It's not much, he said in the tone of a man who clearly loved it more than he was letting on. Bought it off an estate sale 2 years ago. Still fixing it up one room at a time. It's got a porch swing. I'm already more impressed than I want to admit. That got the real smile out of him. It changed his whole face, softened the jaw, put a crease at the corner of his eyes that made him look younger, less like a man holding a hammer and more like a boy who used to build tree forts. We didn't go inside, not at first. He pulled 2 folding chairs and a couple of old towels onto the porch, poured coffee from a thermos that had clearly been meant for his own night, not for company, and handed me a mug that said World's OKIYEST Fisherman in faded letters. We sat there while the storm did its worst about 10 feet away, close enough to feel the mist off the rain, but dry enough to forget we were supposed to be anywhere else. Here's the thing about being trapped somewhere with a stranger: the normal rules stop applying. You're not making small talk to fill the space before the check comes. You've got nowhere to be for hours, and the rain is loud enough that silence doesn't feel awkward, it just feels like part of the night. So we talked. Really talked, the kind where you surprise yourself with what you're willing to say out loud to someone you met properly 40 minutes ago. He told me about the business, his dad's, before it became his, and how he'd come back to Birch Hollow 2 years ago after his dad's knees finally gave out, thinking it'd be temporary, a favor. 6 months at tops. Never left, he said, shrugging like it embarrassed him a little. Turns out I like it here, didn't expect that. Thought I'd be back in the city within the year, miserable and broke and telling myself it was character building. What changed, honestly? I think I just got tired of being somewhere on purpose instead of somewhere I actually wanted to be. He turned the mug in his hands. That sound insane? No, I said, and meant it more than I expected to. It sounds like the opposite of insane, actually. It sounds like the smartest thing anyone's said to me all week, and I've spent the week around a wedding planner. I told him about freelancing. About the apartment in the city that I loved and resented in equal measure. About how Sadie was the last of my college friends who still called just to talk and not just to make plans. Somewhere in there I told him about the breakup 2 years back, the one that had made me build a very tidy, very reasonable wall around my chest and call it independence. He didn't push on it. He just nodded like he recognized the shape of it and said, "Yeah, I did the online dating thing for a while after a breakup of my own. Wasn't really for me." "Oh God, me too," I said, laughing before I could stop myself. "For like 4 months, total disaster from start to finish. One bad date, one bad almost date," I said. "I stood a guy up. Still feel awful about it, actually. Wasn't even my fault. My car died in the work parking lot, and by the time I got it towed, I was 2 hours late and too mortified to even text him an explanation. So I just deleted the app that same weekend. Coward's move, honestly. Caleb had gone very still, in the particular way people go still when a memory is rearranging itself in real time. "Where were you supposed to meet him?" he asked, and something in his voice had changed, careful now, like he already half knew the answer and was scared of it anyway. "This taco truck, actually. Rose's by the old feed store. It's not even in this town, it's—" I stopped. I felt the porch tilt, or maybe that was just my stomach. "Why, I waited an hour and 40 minutes at Rose's," he said quietly. "August 2 years ago. I remember because it was the hottest day of the summer, and I stood in that sun in a shirt I'd actually ironed. Which, if you knew me, you'd understand was a very big deal. Nobody said anything for a second. The rain filled it in for us, steady against the porch roof. "That was you," I said, and it wasn't a question either, not really, the way his stay hadn't been. "Guess it was." I put my face in my hands, half laughing, half something closer to tears. "I am so sorry. I thought about texting you an apology for weeks after. I told myself you'd already written me off as a flake and moved on, and it felt easier to just disappear. And let you think whatever you wanted to think. I didn't write you off." His voice had gone soft, almost rough at the edges. "I just figured I'd read the whole thing wrong, figured I wasn't what you were looking for, and that was that. I deleted the app that same week, actually. Told myself I was bad at this whole thing." "You weren't bad at it, I was scared," I said, and it came out truer than I meant it to. "I'd just gotten out of something that took a long time to get over, and I think some part of me needed you to be a flake or a bad match. Or anything other than someone who might have actually been right, because right felt like a bigger risk than wrong ever did. Wrong I knew how to survive." He looked at me for a long moment, rain sliding silver down the porch light behind him, and said, That's either the most honest thing anyone said to me on this porch, or the most terrifying thing anyone said to me on this porch. Can't it be both? Yeah, he said, and something in his face had gone soft and unguarded in a way that made my chest ache. I think it can be both. We sat there a while longer, coffee gone cold, both of us circling the strange gravity of it, that we'd already almost done this a year and a half ago. Under a hot August sun instead of a cold October rain, and missed each other by a couple of hours and a broken-down car, and two people too proud to send one more text. It didn't feel like coincidence anymore. It felt like something the universe had simply been rescheduling patiently until we were both ready to show up. Somewhere past 11, the porch swing chain creaked as he sat down on it, testing it first like he wasn't sure it would hold two people anymore, and after a second I sat down beside him. Close enough that our shoulders were touching, the storm easing from a roar to a steady, patient hush against the roof. Can I ask you something? He said. Depends how terrifying it is. He laughed quiet. If your car hadn't broken down, if you'd shown up that day. You think it would have worked? I thought about it, really thought about it, not just the easy answer. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe. Or maybe I wasn't ready yet and it would have fallen apart in a month, and we'd have been two more people who didn't work out and never thought about it again. I looked over at him. But I don't think that's what happened. I think we needed the 2 years. I needed them anyway. And now I'm sitting on a porch with someone who waited an hour and 40 minutes in an ironed shirt for a woman who never showed, and instead of that being sad. It just feels like maybe we got a second version, he finished quietly. Yeah, exactly that. He reached over and tucked a piece of damp hair behind my ear, unhurried, like he'd been wanting to do it for hours and had finally run out of reasons not to. For what it's worth, he said, I'd wait an hour and 40 minutes again, longer probably. Wouldn't even be that mad about it. You'd be a little mad about it, maybe a little, he admitted, smiling. I'd get over it fast. The space between us had gone thin as paper, charged the way the air gets right before lightning, and when he leaned in, slow enough that I could have stopped him. Could have said something clever to break the moment the way I usually did. I didn't. I let it happen. I let his hand find my jaw, gentle, like he was asking permission with his fingertips before his mouth ever got there, and when he finally kissed me, it wasn't rushed or desperate, it was patient. The way the whole night had been patient, like we finally had all the time we'd been missing 2 years ago. Somewhere in the house behind us, a clock struck midnight, 12 slow chimes swallowed almost entirely by the sound of rain finally beginning to thin, and neither of us pulled back to check it. We just stayed there on that porch swing, wrapped up in each other and one damp towel and 2 years of almost, until the storm had genuinely nothing left to give. It was well past midnight when he finally walked me down to check the bridge, flashlight cutting through drizzle, both of us laughing about nothing in the loose. Giddy way you do when your whole chest feels rearranged. The water had dropped just enough. Mill Road was clear, moonlight catching on the wet asphalt like something out of a movie neither of us would have believed an hour earlier. I could still walk you the rest of the way, he offered, flashlight beam bobbing between us. I think I can manage a 10-minute drive, I said, though I made absolutely no effort to actually leave, and he made absolutely no effort to let go of my hand. Can I see you tomorrow? At the wedding, I mean, properly. Not as the guy fixing the railing. I was actually hoping you'd ask, I said, because I already told Sadie I might need a +1 for the reception. And she is going to lose her mind when she finds out who it is. He grinned, that same unguarded grin from the porch, and for the first time in 2 years. I didn't feel the old instinct to brace myself against something good. I just let myself want it fully, without the usual asterisk. The wedding the next afternoon was beautiful. String lights finally hung properly on the porch he'd spent a year restoring, the sun out like it was apologizing for the night before. Caleb stood near the back in a clean button-down, no sawdust in sight, and when Sadie caught the two of us slow dancing during the last song of the night. She nearly dropped her champagne trying to get her phone out fast enough. I told her everything on the drive home the next day, the taco truck, the missed date, the storm, the porch. The whole impossible shape of it, and she just laughed and said some people have to lose each other once before they're ready to actually find each other. I think she might be right about that. It's been 8 months now. Caleb still keeps a photo on his phone of that porch swing, storm-lit and blurry, the one he took the morning after while I was still asleep on his couch, curled under the towel from the night before. I ask him sometimes if he ever really forgave me for standing him up, and he always says the same thing, that he didn't have to forgive something the rain was always going to fix eventually. Given enough time and one flooded bridge. I don't know if I believe in fate, not really, not the capital F kind. But I believe in a low bridge that floods until midnight, and a porch swing with rusted chains, and a man patient enough to wait an hour and 40 minutes twice, for the same woman 2 years apart. In two completely different kinds of weather. Thank you so much for listening to this one. If you enjoyed it, I would genuinely love it if you stuck around and followed the channel. There are so many more stories just like this one waiting for you. And I have to ask because I'm truly curious, has anything like this ever happened to you? A near miss, a second chance you almost didn't get? Or maybe you've watched it happen to someone you love, someone who got their own version of a rain-soaked porch and a bridge that finally cleared. I would really love to hear about it, so drop it in the comments below. I read every single one. Until next time.